Hello, ladies. Welcome to episode 11. And in this episode, I want to talk about how to embrace breaking up. So, unbeknownst to most of us going into this dating journey after a divorce, breakups are just a normal part of the process. And I think over time, we make it a lot more painful for ourselves than we need to because we're just not aware that, oh, it's going to happen. And it might happen many times. And in fact, breakups happening are not a bad thing, they're actually a good thing. So, we're going to break down breaking up, why they feel so painful, what you can do about it, how you can avoid exposing yourself to multiple breakups that are unnecessary, and how to handle them when they happen. So, let's get started. When you're dating, whether you're dating online or you're dating through your network or through a matchmaking service, you're going to come in contact with several people who are not going to be a fit for you. In fact, the more people you meet, which is a sign that you are doing dating right, when you're meeting lots and lots of potentially compatible men on your journey, right? You're going to have to say no to most of them because you're only looking for the one. So if you meet 100 people on your dating journey, you're going to say no to 99 of them and say yes to the one who is the perfect match for you. Now, those 99, when you break up with them, those breakups will look very different. Sometimes you break up after the first text and the guy messages you and says something inappropriate in his very first message. You're going to break up right there. You're going to be like, this is not for me. Thanks, but no thanks. And then with some other people, you're going to maybe date them casually for several weeks, trying to figure out if there's a match. And along the way, you're going to realize, oh, this isn't a match. Something might come up, or you might find out that um, there are differences that are just not, that you can't reconcile. And you're going to have to say, hey, thank you for the time and attention that you've paid me. I appreciate it, but we're not a fit for a long term relationship. So, dating is going to require that you break up with people, right? And it can't be something that we feel really reluctant to do. Dating can't be something that you have like extreme resistance to. If you do have a lot of resistance to breaking up, what happens is you end up spending way too much time with the people you shouldn't spend time with, right? And I have worked with many women who, when they start working with me on their dating journey, they're in a relationship that they know is not a fit for them and they just don't know how to break up. So I worked with a woman who, dated a guy for 3 years, and he kept pushing off the commitment. Oh, let's get engaged in 2 years, right? And so he was kind of running the relationship on his timeline and pushing it out all the time, and she couldn't bring herself to break up and go back on the market and find someone whose relationship whose commitment timeline was a match for hers. And I remember talking to her recently, and come to find out that during the time that she had been with this gentleman, they dated for like 2 to 3 years, she found out that another member of her church had been interested in asking her out and had even made like a couple of overtures, like, what's happening here? Are you with someone? Are you not with someone? And she completely missed all the signals with this other guy because she was with someone, and all of her time and attention and mental energy were wrapped up in this one guy that she eventually broke up with because the relationship just got really toxic and she had to break up. But she broke up not when she felt empowered to break up. She broke up because now she was forced to, because everything was, really degenerating into an awful relationship. Unfortunately for her, the gentleman who had been interested a year prior was now engaged to somebody else. So that didn't work out. But there are plenty of people out there, right? And now she's working on getting back into the dating game and finding the person who's meant for her. I also worked with a young lady who had been engaged to someone, and he would never commit to getting married. So he kept pushing the engagement, the wedding out, by years. But even within that relationship, there was a lot of toxicity. He was mentally abusive, he was verbally abusive. There was a lot of chaos and a lot of really ugly things that happened within the relationship. But she felt like he was the one. Like she just kind of like had this attachment to him that he was the one, and somehow they would make it work. Well, eventually their relationship escalated into some real ugliness, and he broke up with her. And that's when she came to work with me, was when, in a sense, she had gone through a breakup outside of her choice. Like when a breakup is forced on her. And I noticed that that happens frequently to women, is that we don't want to break up. We wait until the breakup is forced on us. And I will say, in my first marriage, that's kind of what happened too. I was not the one who filed for a divorce, although in retrospect, I really should have, like, way, way, way earlier. I left that marriage when the breakup was forced on me. So I'm really familiar with all the thought processes that go into staying in a relationship when you should really leave the relationship. In a couple of other examples, I have worked with a woman who, dated a guy for about a month. Things started out really well. And then about a month in, she realized, okay, he's kind of controlling, he's kind of pushy, really doesn't have a lot of empathy, and he's just way too needy. And this is not for me. This is not the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And she just had so much trouble saying the words, thank you, but no thank you. She just had a lot of trouble going into a text message or a phone call and breaking up the relationship. And she circled around it and kept giving him another chance. And, well, maybe I'm being too hasty, and maybe this, maybe I'm misjudging him, and going around and around until um, she finally got the courage to break up with him. And this was really interesting. And I want to highlight this because this will happen. He did not want to break up with her. So he began putting pressure on her to stay in the relationship. He put pressure on her to not throw something wonderful away. And at that point, we had worked together enough that she was able to say, okay, I'm seeing the signs that he's putting pressure on me. He's not addressing any of my concerns. He's not making any changes. And even in the words that he's using to respond to my request to break up, he's negating my concerns and putting me down and gaslighting me. So um, these things happen in so many ways. Sometimes you don't want to break up because there's a physical attraction, right? And you know that when you break up with that person, you're going to feel that loneliness. You're going to miss being with someone or having someone in your orbit, and you want to avoid that. Now, Carl Jung is a psychologist, I guess, one of the fathers of psychology, and he made a statement that is particularly appropriate to this situation. He said, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. What's happening here in all these examples that I've given, and even in my own experience with not living my marriage when I really had seen all the signs that it was a toxic relationship, is that I was avoiding the legitimate suffering that comes with ending something when it should be ended. And all of my clients who have also presented with this issue are trying to avoid the adversity, the normal adversity that comes with the dating process. We're all trying to avoid the pain that comes with breaking up, even when we don't like the person, even when we don't want to be with the person. The problem with avoiding that pain is that we will do something neurotic. Whatever you do to avoid legitimate suffering is going to be something that will harm you, right? You're going to create a situation that is potentially worse than what would have happened if you had just ripped the band-aid off, ended the relationship, and moved on. And what's interesting about the pain that comes with breaking up is that we are actually the ones creating the pain, right? We create this pain with the way we think about the breakup. When you go into a breakup thinking, I'll never find someone better, you create the pain. You create this anticipation of uh, being lonely forever. And so you begin to feel that pain of being lonely forever. Not because that's actually happening to you, but because you're thinking you'll never find someone better. When you think the thought, well, we've been together X weeks, X months, X years, I've invested so much, that thought creates the pain of losing something that you think is precious to you. Not because you're actually losing something, right? In many cases, you're actually losing something that's bad for you. You're losing something that's toxic for you. You're losing something that's in the way of your best life and your best relationship. But when you think the thought, I am losing an investment, I'm losing effort and energy that I've invested, you actually create the pain of loss for yourself. When you think the thought, I don't want to be lonely, it's better to have someone around me, you create the thought, that thought creates comfort in your present circumstances. That thought like elevates the feeling of being comfortable and the feeling of being at ease, and elevates the feeling of discomfort that you think you'll have when you actually let go of the person. And all of that is pain that you're creating around the heartbreak because of your thoughts. Sometimes we also think, well, I don't want to hurt him. He's such a nice guy, right? He's done so much. He's paid for all my dinners. I don't want to be the girl who, went to dinner and let him pay. And now I just broke up with him after he paid for my dinner. Those thoughts are creating the pain because you think it means something about you if you break up with someone. It means you're selfish. It means you're mean. It means you're hurting someone else. But all of that pain is created by your thoughts, right? When you change the way you think about heartbreak, for instance, you go into the dating journey thinking, okay, I'm getting ready to start dating. I'm going to break up with some people. It's just a normal part of it. It's just part of my day. It's like traffic lights, right? I'm going to run into some red lights when I'm driving down on my commute. When you think about it that way, it just becomes a normal part of life, and you remove the anticipation of pain. And even when it is painful, right? Because sometimes you do feel that loss. Sometimes you do feel the loneliness. Sometimes you do see the hurt on the person's face, and that's uncomfortable. Because you anticipate and embrace that it's a part of the journey, you're able to, create the courage to step into it, do what needs to be done. Of course, yeah, and of course, you want to do it in a graceful way. You want to do it kindly. You want to do it firmly. You also want to do it finally, right? So that a breakup isn't taking a year, right? Um, so you want to do all of those things, but even with that, sometimes heartbreak is just hard, and you feel the loss, and you feel the disappointment, and you feel the pain beyond the extra pain that you create with your thoughts. Sometimes you just feel the pain. You can actually start to think thoughts like, okay, this pain is uncomfortable. It's an emotion in my body that I don't like. But what if instead of avoiding and multiplying that pain, you embraced it by thinking, I can handle this emotion. I can grow through this process. I can learn so much about myself by going through this pain and going through this difficulty, going through this adversity, this legitimate suffering. I can become a better person. When you think that thought, your brain starts to see more opportunities for your own growth and transformation, even when going through a breakup. So, why do we gravitate to all of these thoughts that cause us so much pain around breakups? Why are those the default thoughts, right? Why is it just so normal to go through this excessive pain when going through a breakup, right? Well, the brain wants certainty, especially in the dating process. Our brain wants to be sure. We all want to be right. We all want to know what we're doing. We all want to feel like we're safe with the certainty of what we're doing, even if the certainty is harming us. And this is where black and white thinking comes from, which is a cognitive distortion, which just means a way of looking at the world that is not effective and not even true. When it comes to dating, I notice that most of my clients want to be certain. So when they meet a guy, they want to be sure that he's the one for them or not the one for them. It's like there's only two buckets when they meet someone. He's either for me, he's either the one, or I'm just going to swipe left because he's 100% not the one. right? And so what happens is if a man shows up and they go on a date, if he's for sure 100% not a fit, it's very easy. They're able to say, okay, no. And so that heartbreak or that breakup doesn't feel so hard. But if the man is a potential fit where, okay, he looks like he might be a fit, but I'm not sure, the brain immediately jumps from 0 to 1. He's the one, right? And so even though you're not committed physically or you're not in a relationship or you're not exclusive, your brain has attached to the person mentally. He is the one. So you're starting to think thoughts about him being the one. You're starting to see yourself walking down the aisle with this guy. You're starting to imagine what your babies look like. You're starting to, you know, practice signing his last name as your name, even though it's the only the third date, right? Your brain has leapt from, oh, he's definitely not the one to 100% he's the one. And when you do that, which is also a creation of your own thoughts, it becomes so much harder to break up. When it's time on the fourth date and you realize he's not the one for you, your brain creates so much emotional drama and wants to avoid the pain of admitting that, oh, he actually wasn't the one, right? And so it starts to give you all these thoughts that keep you spinning in indecision, and for some of you, you start to put blinders on. You start to ignore all of the red flags and all of the yellow flags and all the things that your intuition is telling you about him not being the one because your brain is so attached to him being the one. Your brain just wants that certainty, and you start having trouble holding the middle ground, which is okay, he may not be the one, or he may be the one, but right in the middle is I don't know if he's the one. And just being comfortable with that uncertainty of not knowing the one. The brain, if you've already attached to him as being the one, you're going to have a lot of trouble being in that space where, oh, this could go either way. You know, he might be the one, he might not be the one. I might have to break up with this guy. So when it becomes really clear that you have to break up with him, your brain goes into so much scarcity, so much fear of missing out, so much fear that you'll never meet anyone else, all the thoughts that we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. And what's interesting is many times your brain is going into all of this drama over someone you barely know, over someone that maybe you've only been on 3 dates and maybe spent, I don't know, 10 hours together. But because of the patterns of thinking, your brain has created such a monument to this person that it makes it hard for you to take the actions you need to take when it comes to breaking up. And now it thinks you're invested, now it thinks you're a thing, and it actually tags it as a breakup. What's actually useful when it comes to dating and the potential for breakups is to approach it like a full, emotionally independent adult and remove the emotional drama around something that's just a part of life. Like I said earlier, breakups are just a normal part of dating. They are a skill that you need to practice, that you need to learn, that you need to practice. You need to plan for it. You need to assume that it's going to happen. You need to prepare for it. And then you need to adopt a whole new way of thinking around breakups. And this is where coaching is so powerful because it takes your default brain that's causing you so much pain and suffering along the path of dating and really rebuilds it from the ground up with whole new patterns of thinking, whole new ways of seeing the world that are so much more powerful, so much more effective, and that get you the results you want in dating. You can start to believe that there's someone out there for you for sure. You can start to believe that no, you're not too picky. You know, you can start to believe that loneliness is just an emotion that you can investigate and grow from. You can start to increase your capacity to hold these emotions and learn from them and grow through them, right? You can start to think thoughts like, oh, it's better to use this energy to discover myself than to spend the energy fighting with this person in a relationship. You can start to think, I can handle any emotions that come along. You can start to think, he may want to be with me, but that doesn't obligate me to be with him, right? You can start to think, I can detach with grace and kindness. There's so many possibilities when you choose a different way of thinking about breakups. So, here are four things that will be immensely helpful for you when it comes to prepping for breakups, making them something that's easy to handle, and just a normal part of the dating process. One is to know exactly what you want. When you know exactly what you want and you've decided on the man you really want, it becomes easy to say no to everyone who isn't that guy. Stop worrying about being too picky, right? Most women are not too picky. Most women are actually not picky enough. Evaluate your dates with what your decision ahead of time was about what you wanted and immediately let go of anyone who doesn't match what you're looking for. Two, have a dating process. I teach my clients to define their relationship gates ahead of time. What do you need to know at every stage of the relationship in order for the relationship to move forward? And then hold yourself accountable no matter what to the dating process that you defined ahead of time. What are the milestones that you need to see to be sure that a relationship is going in the right direction? What are the conversations you need to have? What do you need to know about the person? All of that should be defined in depth before you start to date so that when you're in the dating process, when you're on a date, when you're talking to a guy, you know exactly if he's the one for you, if he's not the one for you, and you can stay accountable to moving on very quickly when it's not the right guy. Three, develop emotional independence. When you are seeking approval from the people that you're dating, when you are seeking validation from other people, you will try to make them feel better about you by betraying yourself. So I have talked to women who found themselves engaged to someone because they just couldn't bring themselves to hurt him. And I have air quotes up by saying, I don't want to marry you. You're not the one for me. And every time they tried to break up, the man would pressure them into continuing the relationship all the way to getting married. I worked with a client who had gotten a divorce after about a year of her first marriage. And the way she got married was really telling because she had actually made a decision to break up with her boyfriend, and so she didn't want to break up over text or over the phone. So she went to visit him. It was a long distance relationship. She went to visit him to tell him in person that she was breaking up with him and ended up engaged to him by the end of the weekend. And this is where you need to develop emotional independence because when you don't have appropriate emotional boundaries, you're easily manipulated and easily pressured into situations that you don't want to be in. You betray yourself so that others can feel good and others can get what they want. You when you date someone, you start to find yourself getting sucked into their timeline and into their dating process instead of staying in your lane and what you are looking for in a dating relationship. When you don't have emotional dependence, it always feels wrong to choose what's right for you. You always feel more motivated to choose what's right for the other person. Now, emotional dependence is a growth process. It's not something you can turn on with the snap of a fingers, but you have to have it in order to successfully date after divorce. And then finally, if you have attachment issues, they also contribute to making breakups super difficult. If you are an anxious if you have anxious attachment, which means you're just always insecure about where you stand with people and you have a lot of feelings of not belonging, a lot of feelings of not being wanted, you might find yourself attaching to people who seem to want you even when they're not a fit for you. Now, attachment issues, love addiction, avoidant relationship patterns are a whole topic. I did want to just mention them on this podcast, but I'm not going to be able to go into them in depth. But I do want to mention them because they do contribute to making breakups challenging. When you follow these four steps, knowing exactly what you want, working your own dating process, developing emotional independence, healing from attachment issues. What happens is while you're dating, you're able to keep your space clear of anyone who is not a good fit for you, right? Your brain is clean and uncluttered. You're not wrapped up in obsessive thinking, overthinking, overanalyzing, anxiety, right? When you're wrapped up in all of those things, you won't even notice when a good man shows up in your orbit. Like you're just so wrapped up in your own head, you won't see the good men in your environment. Or when your attention is so focused on the man who's not a fit for you, but who's taking up all this space in your life, really hard to make space for a good person. So when you embrace breakups, embrace all of these steps, it's like you have this burden lifted off of you. Dating becomes much less of a chore, becomes a lot more fun and refreshing because you're doing it the way you want to do it. You're empowered and you feel like you have control over your dating experience. And it really ends the cycle of toxic dating, being enmeshed with people, all the drama, all the drama that we hate about the dating experience. It all goes away when you embrace what the process actually looks like. You develop the skills and the ability to handle the process with like full emotional adulthood. And you find yourself no longer engaging in all of these like start stop relationships. So, thank you for joining me for embracing breakups today. I know this was a tough one and there's a lot in there, but I would love to hear from you. So if you're not on my mailing list, go to shadicurry.com. You can sign up to be on my mailing list and you can ask me questions around these topics, and I would be happy to answer you or answer these questions on one of the future podcasts. Thank you for your time and attention, and I will see you next time.